Here we are, we're going down and putting the goats in with our chickens for a little bit. Sorry, it's a little bright. It's a beautiful day God has blessed us with. You can see Katie Ann riding on my back. Courtney's not the only one that can do it, but I have Dolly and Gracie and Abigail, I think, is trying to get in the bucket.
Well, the roosters are crowing, gotta rise and shine. Daylight's a burning, ain't got a lot of time. When the day is over and the work's all done, we'll sing and dance and have a little fun.
This is our cucumber patch. This is where we usually plant cucumbers. It does really well. It's kind of out of the way. When we bought the place, there was this hickory tree. It looks like the wind had blown it over and they had cut it. So what we did, instead of pulling it up, we were like, oh, that'll be a naturally decomposing fertilizer source. So let's dig and till and we'll make this our cucumber patch. So what I did is took some T-posts and a cattle panel and wrapped it around it and made a trellis. Well, as you can see, since last fall, the undergrowth has just really taken over. So what I'm about to do is take the cattle panel down, pull up the T-posts, and I'll get in here and clean this up really nice, till it up again, and we will start our cucumber seeds to be able to transplant up here. As you also can see, the elderberries have now grown tremendously. So we used to plant cucumbers on this side of it, but I would say more than likely they're going to get shaded out. So we'll focus probably on either side of the stump, also on the back side of it. Also, because we like to be resourceful and mindful, we also usually plant some sort of flower in amongst our cucumbers. Last year we planted marigolds in with it. I think they all died out over the winter. Looks like I see a bunch of wild strawberries and thorns and other wild things. But we'll probably plant some other wildflowers. And you can see in our elderberry patch we have tons of just wildflowers. Then I have, this is my homemade T-post puller. Being on a homestead, growing up on a farm, you learn to be very resourceful. And so what I've taken here, almost every bit of this is something that I found on our property. The only thing that I've had to supply really is a pin, some washers, a couple of nails, and of course I had to have a welding machine, which we do have one. I got it for Christmas a couple of years ago. But I've found some old tubing, pipe, whichever, and the larger bore is my main stem. It goes down to a base plate. I think that came from when we had our porch. We had rails put on our porch. That's the base plates that actually screw into the concrete, and we had some extra ones of those left over, so I used that as the pressure plate. And then I have the stem. The handle is actually a piece of old well pipe from our well. I guess they've had to have maintenance at some point, and they replaced it. And I found this when we ran our goats a couple of years ago. Our large male goats that we used to have, they came through, and I found this 40-foot section of pipe. And then I have a piece of plate here that I've cut with a Sawzall and made my bracket design that goes around the T-post. I just cut that, and then I welded that to some galvanized pipe that I took out when I plumbed our house. Of course, with galvanization, you have to grind that off, because when you weld galvanized pipe, it produces some toxic fumes and can make you sick. But I did all that. I've welded it. We've used it quite a bit now, and it's actually held together, which kind of surprised me. I'm still learning how to weld decently. That you can see I use a lot of on the property is electric fence wire. That is my go-to tool. I use it for everything. You can see it here. I've used it to tie this cattle panel together to make some sort of trellis. I've also used it, since this isn't really holding anything in, I've used it as a makeshift T-post clip. I've used it for the chicken water. I actually use it for the bracket to hold it. also, since it's a bucket, it doesn't like holding 5 gallons worth of water. It has pulled out of the plastic, so I made a bracket that goes around the bucket to hold the weight. And then you can see up here, I've used electric fence wire to hold the bucket here in my tripod. And I've used it to make a handle on my chicken tractor to pull. And I used some extra pieces of PEX for handles so it doesn't hurt your hand. And inside the chicken tractor, I used it as guide wires. I know it's hard to see with the tarp, but you can see the electric fence wire running through here and makes guide wires around it on either side of it to hold the tarp off of the chickens. It was an idea I had to save on weight so that I didn't have to run post. I didn't have a conduit bender, so I didn't use the conduit like a lot of chicken tractors do. This one's a little large. I'm gonna end up splitting it in half and making it a smaller chicken tractor here soon for our meat birds. Change out the tarp. I'd love to see and hear what all uses you, or what all innovations that you do on your homestead. Like I said, electric fence wire is one of my most go-to. I even use it to straighten out our cherry tree, which has several cherries on it. I don't know if you follow us on Instagram, but you can see we have cherries on our cherry tree, and I'm using the electric fence wire as a guide wire, I guess, to pull it straight. And I'm also using an old glove to keep it from going into the bark. And I have many, many, many uses for electric fence wire. So now I'll demonstrate how my T-post puller works. It'll work just like any other store-bought T-post puller, except this one didn't really cost me anything. You can see I have it in position. It's behind the T-post with the bracket type thing going around and clipping onto one of these little I'm not sure what those are called, but it's attached to one of those. So what I'll do is I will get over here and push down on that handle, and it'll pull up this T-post like so. You get another bite, you pull it out again. So now I have a T-post out of the ground, and that T-post has been in the ground for over 2 years. And like that, one-handed while videoing, I have a T-post out of the ground.